Hey, what's up? Good morning. Jamie here, and we got another incredible week to continue building the lives and the careers that we want. I'm very excited for this week. This is something that I geek out about. I love talking about how we can consistently increase our own value and then be able to monetize that and bring it to the marketplace and whatever it is that you do. So the crux of this video is we're going to be talking about how do you increase your value in the marketplace. And in terms of the marketplace, think of that as your professional career. How can you consistently increase your value as a professional and at the same time be able to monetize that? So there's going to be 5 main points that we're going to cover in this video. So we're going to start with how we provide value to the marketplace and boiling that down to where most of you and most people are providing value in the marketplace. And then secondly is limited versus unlimited value, and kind of what does that mean and how can we think about and start to understand the difference between where do people hit value ceilings and then where are people able to literally exponentially increase their value and therefore be compensated for that. And then third, we're going to talk about the value of creativity and problem solving in the marketplace. A lot of people believe that creativity is arts or music or anything liberal arts-ish, and I want to break that myth, and we'll define what is creativity and then how can you be implementing that and focusing on it because it's so extremely valuable. And then the fourth thing is how to think creatively. So there's one specific method that I'm going to share with you that it's worked exceptionally well for me, and I think that who I learned it from, it obviously worked very well for him, so I think you'll really enjoy that. And then the fifth is how you can specifically increase your value in the marketplace, and I'll share several steps that you can begin thinking about for your own professional career. So I'm excited. Let's get to it. All right, so to start this video, we're going to begin with how we provide value to the marketplace, and also, even before that, at a higher level, how do we even make money overall? So there's really 3 main ways that we can make money in the marketplace. So we're either providing labor, we're either earning profit, or we're earning rent. And the way that most people build fortunes is they start with labor, they invest in profit and rent. So they're making money here, but they're reinvesting a portion of their labor income into both profit and rent. But what we're not going to focus on for this video is these 2. So this is how most people in the world make money, is trading time and skill and knowledge for an income. And whether it's physical labor or mental labor, it's the same concept, is that you have skills and knowledge that are valuable and you're bringing those to the marketplace and someone else is paying you for them. Now, most people have one client, which is their company, and they have an annual recurring fee, which is their salary. And then maybe they get a bonus or a raise at the end of the year or something like that. But for the most part, this is where, I'm pulling this number out of a hat here, but if I had to put a guess, it's probably 95% of the world. I mean, the vast majority of people, this is how they're making money. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the reason that is because this is where, if we're at the bottom of the totem pole and we have to start making money, well, it takes either money or specialized skill or relationships, or these require more resources, more assets, more skill and expertise, more experience. And so whenever we start our careers, we're almost always starting in labor, assuming that we don't have someone else investing us or a mentor that's saying, all right, jump straight into anything like that. So if you're watching this video, most likely you've made money from labor. And that's also, if you think of the education system, for the most part, it's, K through 12, we learn fundamentals. If we do go to either community college or if we go to a 4-year degree or any other advanced degrees, for the most part, we're learning tangible, usually technical skills. And if we do a liberal arts degree, and that's why people give them a bad rap, but at the end of the day, most liberal arts majors still then graduate and get a technical job, whether that's in marketing or sales, or if they go into operations, supply chain, strategy, finance, accounting, or maybe they go into some type of engineering. But for the most part, we learn skills and knowledge, we graduate, and then we get a job doing labor. And so we make money through this in primarily 3 different ways: through execution, through problem solving, and through leadership. Now, when we start our careers, again, we're at the bottom of the totem pole, but whenever we start, we're primarily executing. And that's also where a lot of people stay. Many people do not transition into problem solving or leadership. And so when you think about how could some people stay in the same position for 20 years and roughly make the same amount of money? Well, it's because they're executing. They're doing roughly the same thing and adding the same value to the marketplace just over a long period of time. And so they continue kind of cranking the same wheel. And so the marketplace does not reward them because they're roughly doing the exact same thing. And so we'll talk more about that in the coming sections, but this is the most important thing: is there's execution, there's problem solving, there's leadership, and these pay very, very differently from one another. And oftentimes leadership is also coexisting with problem solving. Many leaders are the problem solvers. And within problem solving, there's two main types of creativity or problem solving that we bring to the marketplace. So the first is optimization. And then the second is innovation. Now, people could argue, all right, well, innovation could be optimization, blah. So what we're just going to focus on for this is, think of this as something already exists and you're improving it. Again, for this video, bear with me. Innovation is something has not existed before. It's new. It's a new idea. It's a new product. It's a new service. It's a new team. It's a new way of structuring things. It's a new company. It's something new. So this is the most important part for this part is problem solving. You can think of creative problem solving in two main ways. I'm either improving something that already exists, or I'm creating something that has not existed before that is extremely valuable, or that's valuable to the marketplace. All right, so now let's talk about the second part of this video, which is limited versus unlimited value, and how both of those are going to influence our careers, how much money we make, and ultimately our career path going forward as well. So this is a rough outline of the economic value ladder, and obviously it's pretty barren, pretty simple. But the most important part is that all of us fall somewhere on this spectrum. So there's $10 an hour, or whatever the minimum wage is in the marketplace, in that niche of the market. And then there's going to be people who are making $1,000 an hour or a lot more. And also, so this is also assuming a democracy, a free market where people have the ability to continue moving up within their career, making a lot more money. And the other thing is kind of, put aside your thoughts on whether or not this is right or wrong, because I know that that's a huge debate about, what should be the minimum wage. And that's a massive ethical morality problem. We're not going to address that in this video. So think of this as objectively, today, right now in our lives, this is how the marketplace works. So if we want to build a house, we need to use the tools that we have. If we want to build an amazing future, this is what we've got, and this is what we better use. So where we fall on this ladder is primarily based on our skills, our knowledge, and our experience. And how we put those together and how we bring value to the marketplace is going to determine where we fall. Now, the important thing is that notice it's not a straight line. And the reason for that is, if we provide value to the marketplace, but we don't actively go out of our way to monetize that, to ask for the money, or to say, hey, this is the value I'm providing. I know it's valuable. I'd like to be compensated fairly for that. Well, if you have a boss or a manager or a client or someone else and you're doing, you're going above and beyond, but you're not asking for fair compensation, well, guess what? You are the perfect employee. Every manager wants someone who's going to work hard, add more value, be phenomenal, develop themselves, and then not ask for anything. And so that's why there's these steps, because these are monetization points. So monetization points. Now, a lot of people believe that they need to leave a company or join something new or do something else in order to make more money, but that's just not true. And kind of the most important thing is developing yourself, but then being able to negotiate and persuade someone or influence someone to say, hey, I added a lot of value this year, and if you could take a look and then you kind of lay out the pitch to them and then negotiate. Fewer than 15% of people, and that's a stat, I don't know the source right now, but I remember looking that up, and fewer than 15% of people ever negotiate. That's a wild stat. And so this is super important because no one's going to pay us more if we don't provide more value and then ask to be fairly compensated for that. All right, so that was kind of a sidebar, but in terms of this, climbing this ladder, so fair market value and substitutability. So think of fair market value as every skill and knowledge set and how we actually go about laboring in the marketplace is going to determine how much money we make. So for example, an example of fair market value would be, think of a doctor. So a doctor goes to school, they go through their undergrad, pre-med, and then they go on to their med school, and then they have 3 years of residency. So by the time they're out, they've been in school for like 11 years or something crazy. And I might be getting that wrong. I'm not a doctor. But so doctors graduate from, their med school, their residency, and then they're finally, fully functioning doctors making their paycheck. Well, when they go out and they get their first position, they roughly know how much they're going to be making because there's a fair market value for certain types of doctors. Now, another example would be, well, if you go through med school and then you go through the residency and then maybe you go in for a specialization, like become a brain surgeon. Well, brain surgeons require a whole nother, I don't know how many years of additional schooling and how expensive that is. But when they graduate and then they go out and work, well, they have a very different market value. It's probably between 5 to 15 times the average earnings, annual income of a pediatrician. So that's just a really simple example of fair market value. And if you think about engineers, if you think about roles in business, it's especially in the early to mid-career, there are very set expected bands of income that we know, all right, I have certain skills and certain knowledge, and if I go to work for a company, I can expect to make roughly between these salary ranges. So the other important part is substitutability. And kind of as a brief anecdote, so when I was in finance, graduated, went to New York, was doing investment banking with Goldman Sachs, I'll never forget there was a senior banker, and I'm not going to say who or he or where or she, but they had many more years of experience than I did. And some of the most blunt advice, or real, I guess, a passing phrase was, never forget that no matter how hard you work, you are a piece of meat on the table. And that was a pretty blunt phrase. But what I really think he or she was getting at was this, because I really don't think they meant it in a negative way. It was kind of like, hey, just remember, do your best, but on the flick of a dime, you could be laid off, you could be substituted, they could hire someone else. And so over the long term, once you get into leadership positions, this becomes a lot harder. And that's also why they get paid more, is because they're more valuable. But the more substitutable you are, the lower the market value is going to be, and that's because of supply and demand, and we'll talk about that. So this is super important because this is where we fall on this. So for example, doctors might be, somewhere up here. And then let's say someone at McDonald's, working at McDonald's, is going to be down here. Assuming that they're running the cash register or something like that. And then maybe someone who's in their first 3 to 5 years of a business role, maybe they're somewhere here. And think of this as 200 to 300K. And then maybe this is 100 to 200. And then this is going to be, I guess, 0 to 100. Okay. Boom. All right. So what's important is we need to know our fair market value. And that's kind of rule number one, is acceptance and awareness. We need to know how much are we being paid and why. Well, we're being paid because of whatever skills you have, whatever knowledge you have, and the experience that you have, and how you've been doing work for a company is going to depend, or that's going to determine where you fall on this ladder. But the other thing to keep in mind is, how substitutable am I? Can I, if I were to be fired or let go today, how long would it take the company or the team to replace me? If you can be replaced within a month, well, you know that you're not going to be making as much money as you could if it was going to take the company or the team a lot longer to replace you, because you've become that valuable. So these are super important and determine where we fall on this ladder. But then there's the question of, all right, well, I want to make a lot more money. Well, how do I do that? How do I become so much more valuable in the marketplace that people are just chucking it at me? Well, we either limit ourselves or we become unlimited. And most people live the rest of their lives and work the rest of their careers primarily in a limited value framework. And this goes back to, in the beginning of the video, I talked about there's execution, there's problem solving, then there's leadership. So leadership and problem solving fall into unlimited, execution falls into limited. So the limited value, so if you're just doing the role and you are pretty substitutable, and again, it's not a good or bad thing when I say this. It's just objectively. Objectively, without any emotion, without any good or bad or right or wrong or anything like that. It's just, am I or am I not? And it's super important that we know this. Because if we are, then we need to know that our ceiling is capped. How much money we can make is going to be capped. Because if we start asking for more without really adding more value, well, they're just going to give us the can and bring in someone else. So the value, when most people's careers are limited because the value that they're providing is based on the work. It's not based on them. And a lot of people take it personally that, oh, they didn't give me the raise, or I got a 2% raise this year, which is zero after inflation. And they take it personally, like my boss hates me. He or she's a complete flaming fill in the blank. And the thing is that they've lost that objective perspective of, I haven't become more valuable and the work I'm doing is roughly the same. I'm doing pretty much the same thing this year as I did last year. Except, so I don't want this to come across as bad, but there's a lot of people who just don't become more valuable. They don't grow. They don't invest in skills. They don't invest in knowledge. Their experience literally just flatlines. So they just keep doing the same thing, but literally expect to be paid more. Well, that's not how the marketplace works. Whether that's right or wrong, not my choice. I didn't make the rule up. So this is super important. When people are not making more money and they're frustrated by that, well, it's because they're probably trapped here. How much they're being paid is by the work. It's not for them or their over and above ideas. So now we can talk about unlimited value, which is going to be primarily creative problem solving and leadership. So unlimited value is value of solving the problem or leading the team. And that is also based on supply and demand, because if the value of an idea is extraordinarily valuable and you're the one that came up with that idea, or you solved the problem, you innovated, or you optimized, and there was some amazing either monetization, increased revenue or something like that, top line, or you improved the bottom line because you were optimizing, you were fixing things, you were making things more efficient. You were using technology in a way that streamlined processes, saving the company time or money or energy. And the value is not going to be based on the work itself, because the value is determined on how amazing was that idea. If it was extraordinarily valuable, well, you're going to get a cut of that. And if you don't get a cut immediately, well, again, that's where, boom, this is where you say, hey, by the way, do you remember that thing I did? That was pretty cool, right? I would like some additional compensation or responsibility or the ability to advance my career in a new position. I'd like to start to run a team. I believe I could do more of that if I had more resources. So then the other part is the supply and demand. And I think I already mentioned that. But it's if you are generating these valuable ideas and or leading a team of people, and you're doing it so in a way that other people can't replicate you, well, you become a lot more valuable because the supply is not there, but the demand is always there. Companies, teams, organizations, they need thinkers who are going to create and solve problems, but they also need amazing leaders. So the moment that you can start to shift and align your career more so into this bucket rather than this bucket, you will have an unlimited ceiling. And a lot of people say, oh, well, I'm still capped by my salary. Well, not necessarily, because then if you do fall into this bucket and you do become that valuable, well, then a company is going to be offering you stock options, or they're going to be offering you bonus or performance plans. They will break the ceiling if you are that valuable. And that is the single most important thing to know is a lot of people believe that they're capped, but they're not. They're just focusing on the wrong bucket. All right, so now let's talk about the third part, which is the value of creativity and problem solving. Now, many people have the limiting belief of I am not creative. And I also had that belief because I used to think that creativity meant being able to paint, being able to play music, being able to write either poetry or stories or something like that. And because I didn't do that growing up, I thought, all right, well, I need to get really good at business because I'm not creative. So none of those things are going to be my future. So I better figure out something else. But that's just not the case. And what I'd like to challenge and kind of present as a new way of thinking about it is from the time you're born, you are naturally creative. That is gods or the creators or the universes, whatever it is that you believe, like that is what makes us human beings, is we see things and we improve them. We think. And the ability to think is why we are the human race. And anytime we have a thought about what should be done in the future, if it's a future-based thought, it's technically creative thinking. And that's the only reason we have economies, we have nations, we have unbelievable cities. And it's because we as humans thought about the future and we saw it, we designed it, we architected it, and then we built it. And that's all creativity is it could be in any realm. It could be business, it could be engineering, it could be arts, it could be personal development, it could be relationships. It's anything that you think of in the future that is going to improve something, think of that as creativity. Now, how creativity works at a high level here is there's going to be skills, knowledge, and experience in your brain. And all your brain is doing is it's connecting things in new ways. It's neural associations that allow you to see things, to understand the world. And in a previous video last week, I shared the difference between objective reality and subjective reality. Well, our skills, knowledge, and experience massively affect our subjective reality and for any given situation, our perspective on the situation. So if you haven't watched that video, go back because it's directly related to this. So if we want to be more creative, we need to feed our mind. And we need more skills, we need more knowledge and more experience. If we don't develop ourselves, if we don't learn new skills or new knowledge or gain new experience, well, our thoughts are going to be roughly the same. They're going to be the exact same next year and 5 years from now and 10 years from now as they are today because we haven't, there's nothing else in there. It's the same stuff. So it's these combination of things. Think of creativity as glasses. You can put on glasses, all of a sudden you can see. Well, you could have, let's take a work example. So let's say there's 10 people at a table, and all 10 of those people have different skills, knowledge, and experience. Well, all 10 of those people are wearing different glasses. And so when there's a problem presented to all 10 people, one person might be able to see something that no one else at the table saw because they were wearing the right glasses. They had the creative spark because of what's in their brain and what's in their mind. Again, the skills, the knowledge, and experience. Now, this is where I want to talk about convergent versus divergent thinking. One of the craziest things is that most people will gather in a room and brainstorm together. Well, they're literally destroying the beauty that is everybody's individual thoughts. Because when that happens is there's going to be convergent thinking. So think of this as all 10 people in the room start and the problem is presented. Well, initially in the first 5 seconds, people are going to be thinking differently. But then there's going to be someone who makes a point, and then some people are going to go, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. Well, immediately their thoughts start converging because they all start thinking the same thing. They're destroying the individuality of thought, the independent thinking process, the creativity. And so what we don't want to do is this. We do not want this. And there's actually a book called Sprint where it talks about Google Ventures, and they deeply communicate the value of divergent thinking, of independent-based thinking. So they kind of do it in multiple different ways in Google Ventures. They present the problem. Everybody has time individually to go think. And then they all form their opinions, and then they literally, after everybody is done thinking of their own thoughts, they then come together and then present to everyone else. And then they do pros, cons, costs, benefits, what's possible, what's most likely not possible. And then they literally just start dissecting and weeding out and figuring out what are the best ideas, what are probably not the best ideas. And then they continue moving on from there. But again, they've completely flipped the thought process. So the problem is presented, and then when people go off independently to go think, and their creative sparks, literally their brain is an engine, and it's just pumping away to try to figure out how to solve this problem. Well, because nobody's infecting other people's thoughts with kind of the group think, well, their thoughts are going to take all sorts of different directions, because that is how the human brain works. So this is super important. And the other main thing that I want to press again is you're creative. You just don't know it and you don't believe it. So next time that there's a problem, have faith in yourself and say, all right, I could potentially have the best solution. It doesn't matter that I'm 20 years more junior than someone else. It doesn't matter. If you have the thought that is valuable, that's the winning thought. Experience is only a part of the thought. This is what's valuable. This is not that valuable by itself. This is not that valuable by itself. And this is not that valuable by itself. All of them will have fair market values individually. But when you put them together, this is unlimited. And that is a gem, that is a jewel. You need to treasure this in every single part of your career, because this is what's going to take you to the next level. All right, so now let's talk about the fourth part, which is breaking down how to actually think creatively. Now, there's many different ways that I can share, but I think this is the most valuable to get across for this video that you can actively start using today. Did I come up with it? No. Who came up with it? Walt Disney. So this is something that senior executives at Walt Disney to this day, they're all trained in this, literally this thought process for being creative, for solving problems. And this is something that Walt Disney had created himself for not only the animation side and the, think of it as the value creation side of Walt Disney, but also for the business building, for the architecting, for raising what is now one of the greatest companies in the world, not just in terms of the value and the joy that they bring and how they contribute to the world, but their financials, their company culture, the brand power that they've built. It all stemmed from thoughts, from creativity. And it started with Walt. And if we go all the way down to the root, this is what he was doing in his mind to build that amazing company. So the very first part is, and this is pretty wild, but like Walt had 3 different chairs. And he considered, and if he didn't have the chairs, he would do this in his mind, but he would say, all right, first I'm a dreamer, then I'm a realist, and third I'm a critic. And he never did them at the same time. So if he was in the dreamer seat, he would let his mind just go. Anything was possible. There was nothing that was impossible. And there was no limitation in his mind. And that was really where he started coming up with the wild ideas for Disneyland in the 1950s, or really the late 1940s, when people were, nothing like that existed. It was unheard of. And when he presented the idea, people thought he was out of his mind, literally. And he really was. He was dreaming. But after he dreamed something so massively big, then he figured out, well, how can it be done? And that's when the realist comes in, is you root yourself on earth and say, okay, how can this actually be done? So think of the dreamer as what? And no limitations. You do not limit your mind. Shines. Cool. So you come up with anything. Anything is possible. Because when you come up with these wilder ideas or things that your mind is trying to play all 3 of these at the same time, and most people's minds are playing the critic, which is, yeah, but we can't do that because. And it's going to give you 1,000 reasons why these things can't happen. Shut that part of your brain off. It has no place here. When you're in this seat, you are only dreaming. You're only thinking. So then the second part is the realist, which is, okay, now that we've kind of created this page or thought of all these different ideas of what could be in the future without killing any ideas, then we come to the second point, and think of it as you're literally stepping into a second seat. Your mind is transitioning into a second gear. And in that part, you're thinking, how? Okay. How could this thing actually be done? How could, based on the resources that we have, based on the team that we have, the people, the current economy, how much cash we have, or even in your own personal life, thinking about, okay, where am I living? Where am I currently working? All the resources that I have, the people that I know, based on what I want for my life, well, how? That's when the realist comes out and starts thinking process-wise, what could this look like? How could this be implemented? And then the third part is the critic. And notice that, or not notice, but what's important to note here is the critic is not here to kill any ideas. The critic is supportive. It's a lot of people believe that the critic is the negative energy in the room, but it's you can be a very healthy, optimistic, helpful critic. And the role of the critic is to poke holes. So think of this as the challenger slash, and this is, the more common term, but just devil's advocate. But the most important thing is when you're thinking about the critic role, it's the purpose of the critic is not to kill something, to destroy an idea, to say this cannot happen because X. It's to say, hey, I love this idea. I think this is super cool. How we could do it, it looks like we have a lot of ideas of how we could actually implement this, but one of the things that we need to think about is X. Or, well, what if this were to happen? And they start, again, playing devil's advocate and poking holes. But all three of these are supportive of the future. They're all trying to support this new innovative or optimization type idea, this creative idea that we're trying to bring to life. All three of these have very different roles, and they coexist, and they create really the future. And so most people, or most companies also, they will split these out into different parts of the company. And so usually these three are not communicating. And so whether it's you individually, where you can get a blank sheet of paper, and I always recommend when you're brainstorming, do what's first called a brain dump. And this is something where, because when a lot of people are thinking, they try to chronologically or prioritize it. They try to put things in order. Don't do that first. Literally just, if you need to, get a blank sheet of paper and just draw a circle in the center to just screw up the whole page. Because then it's going to break the habit of trying to systematize everything immediately. Instead, literally just dump your brain onto a sheet of paper. All your thoughts, all your worries, everything down. And then get a second sheet of paper and reference that first sheet of paper and then start thinking. Because your brain is literally going to switch between recall or creative thinking and then to optimization or processing. And it's going to think and operate very differently, but a lot of people try to do them at the same time. Similarly, everyone tries to do these, or not everyone, a lot of people try to do these at the exact same time. We want to break them apart. So if it's you, picture yourself mentally saying, all right, on this page, I am the dreamer. Next page, okay, on this page, I am the realist. On the third page, I am the critic. And then you think of it as a process where I'm going to start here and then move to the second and then move to the third. Now, if you're with a team, it's going to be most people, again, we talked about the divergent thinking. It would be, you would want most people on that team to go through this process on their own and then come back to the table, all 10 people, present their ideas in this, hey, this is my dream, this is the realistic, realistically, how could we potentially do this? And then these are the holes that I was able to poke through that, right now I don't know how to solve these problems, but these would be the problems. So hope this was super helpful. And again, Walt Disney, obviously it worked for him. It should work for us. All right, so to wrap up this video, we're going to talk about how to increase your value in the marketplace. And I've laid out really 4 steps that you can begin thinking through and applying for your own life and start thinking through how can I advance my career in this direction. So the first is going to be execute and outperform what you're currently doing. Whatever it is that you currently do, that is going to be right now heavily influencing how other people perceive you, perceive your work quality, and also perceive your future. So it's going to determine your reputation, your track record, and really the relationships that you're building. And you're going to need all of those in order to discover new opportunities that people believe in you that you'll be a good fit for. So it's super important that if you want to advance, the very first thing you need to do is outperform in what you currently do. Now, a lot of people don't like what they currently do. Well, there's really 2 options if you want to advance. It's either make a change or outperform and break into either the next level or move somewhere else. So then the second piece is going to be that personal development. So we talked about how the skills, the knowledge, and the experience, those combined are going to generate the creative sparks that you can solve more problems and add more value to the marketplace. Well, if you're not feeding your brain with more information, with new skills, new knowledge, and different types of experience, then you're going to have the exact same neural associations 12 months from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and you have not become more valuable. You cannot solve different problems because you have the same mind. So it's super important. And most people believe that personal development is just this painful thing, like, oh my God, I have to read this book and I'm never going to get paid for it. But that's just not true. You're not going to be paid for it right now. You will be paid for it in the future if you keep going, because all that stuff is going to connect. Your glasses will change. You see things that you didn't see before. You solve bigger problems that are more important, more valuable, and you're then able to communicate that to the team. People start to see you as a leader, and all of a sudden you've been just tremendously adding more value. Well, your career is going to skyrocket long term. So then the third piece is solve more valuable problems and lead people. And that's kind of what I just finished with, but that is the unlimited value piece. So again, most people are stuck in limited value, which is they just keep executing. They're just that, call it a hamster wheel, call it a crane, call it a cog, whatever you want to call it. Is they're doing the exact same thing and thinking that they're more valuable, but they're not. And so what we need to do is break through that ceiling. And the only way to do that is to solve bigger problems, either through innovation or optimization, and then also start to lead people. Because again, those are going to be a lot harder to substitute, and you're going to be adding a lot more value to the team, to the company, and ultimately to the marketplace. So then the final part is take responsibility for your own market value and negotiate. And this is one of the single most uncomfortable things for most people. It's because they've never done it before. They don't like conflict. They're afraid to confront their manager, their boss, or another company or anyone else. And if you don't do it, no one will do it for you. And that's just the raw truth of how the marketplace works. Your boss may like you, but your boss is at most going to give you what's fair. They'll very rarely will a boss go over and above and extend budget and try to push or break through what is pretty much decided for that position. So this is, if you are valuable and you're negotiating and they will not budge, well, you have two options. You either keep pushing or you go elsewhere. And if you are not being paid what you know you deserve to be paid because of the value that you're adding, because of what the fair market value is at other positions, or based on how you believe that you have been, and really there's no clear advancement for you in that career path, well, you're the one that has to take that charge. Because if you don't do it, again, no one else is going to do it for you. And a lot of people just believe that the fight's not worth it. It's not worth standing up for what I believe I'm worth. And so they stay in the same position or in the same track and pretty much just let their career die, or at least stay stagnant and then eventually decline. So we don't want that to happen. That's a sad ending. Instead, again, execute, outperform, begin taking that money, reinvest in yourself, build your mind and your ability to be creative and think new thoughts, solve bigger problems, and lead people. And then the third is pretty much solve problems, lead people. And then fourth, take responsibility and negotiate. So I hope you found this video extremely helpful. There's so much more that goes into this too. I know this video was a little bit longer, but again, I hope it was very valuable for your time investment. And also, if you have been thinking about making a big change in either your career or your life, anything along those lines. So really briefly, what I do is I help people achieve their greatest potential. And there's many different ways that people define that, but my mission is helping people in three main areas. So there's life, there's career, and then there's wealth. And I help people move. So the very first part is build a life plan. What is it that you really want for yourself long term? Once you've designed and architected this amazing life for yourself, well, then the second part is you need to align the career in a way that's going to not only align with the life plan, but it's going to be generating the cash and the resources that you need to then move that into your wealth plan and eventually build a fortune. And the reason that I want people to be wealthy, to have a fortune, is because when your needs are taken care of, only then do most people transition to the state of, I want to give, I want to help, I want to serve, I want to contribute to other people. Most people live their whole lives worrying about themselves and trying to serve their own needs because they're never fully met to the desires that they want, that they never give. And so if we can optimize this process for ourselves and hit a point where us, our family, our loved ones, all that is taken care of, we get to live the rest of our lives focused on building and giving and serving the world and creating new projects or new businesses or adding more value in ways that didn't exist before. So if any of that sounds interesting, go to my website. I have a free case study that's, I think it's 30 minutes or 50 minutes, something like that, somewhere in there. But it's me explaining that process of what that looks like, how it would work for you, and also some of the biggest career mistakes that I see people make. I've worked with people who are senior directors of global companies, and they have enough money for 5 lifetimes, and they still have similar problems as the people who are directly out of college and have no idea how to find fulfillment, how to build the life and the career that they want, and really how to just maximize their own performance. So go to the website. I have a free case study. And also, if you like this video, I come out with these videos once a week, every Monday morning. So click like, click subscribe, and I cannot wait to share another video with you next week. So have an amazing week.